All right, welcome back to another episode of Coach's Corner, which I'm not really in the corner. I mean, I guess this is a corner, so maybe Coach's desk. But anyway, I am Coach Devin, and today one of the questions that I received from the Facebook group that they wanted to hear about was how do you structure nutrition around your day, primarily focusing on your workout? So there's so many different ways that you can tackle this depending on how you're eating, what you're eating, but I'll just kind of walk you through the way I do it with a lot of my clients. I'll try to water it down, make it really simple, just in the terms of if you're training first thing in the morning, if you're training early afternoon, or if you're training late at night, because there are some different variables and things that will adjust based on those training times. So let's start off with somebody that is training mid-afternoon. So that would be somebody like myself. I usually train around 2:30, 3 o'clock every day. So I like to get a couple of meals, usually 2, 3 meals in before I train. It also allows me to get a significant amount of water in, which is probably the most important thing, aside from nutrition. So you want to make sure, and this especially goes for people that train early in the morning, that you're getting adequate water. People downplay how important water and sodium is to your workout. So again, for somebody that's starting off around, let's say midday, so anywhere from, we'll say 2 to 4, maybe 5 p.m. As far as nutrition goes, I'll usually have them do little to no carbs early in the day. And the reason being is that the first meal of the day, with most of my clients, I like to keep them either very low carb or no carb at all. And the benefit to this is by having a meal that is higher in protein and fats, not only does it help keep you satiated a little bit longer, but it gives you more sustained energy to kind of kick your day off because you don't have the lulls of your blood sugar rising and dropping quite as much. So usually that first meal will be a protein and fat meal. I like to do egg whites with whole eggs and chicken sausage, or just a couple of whole eggs with some sort of protein, steak, turkey, chicken, whatever sounds good. So meal number one is going to be primarily protein fat. If we do carbs, usually it's coming in the form of something that is lower glycemic and more complex. So we have less of a blood sugar spike and more of a sustained raise. So that's going to be things like oats with berries. Add a little bit of cinnamon and stevia in there, and it's a great way to get some additional carbohydrates. This is typically something I'll add in for the person that has a job that requires them to be more active. Now, if you're sitting at a desk like I am all day, my go-to is protein fat. So these are all things that I take into consideration. The second meal of the day, we may introduce some carbohydrates depending on if we are looking at being in a surplus. So if the goal is to build muscle, then I'll usually add some in. That's typically, again, trying to stay lower glycemic. We'll do black rice, sweet potato. We may do some white rice, but I'm also going to have some fats in this meal as well. So it'll be primarily moderate protein, moderate fats, and then low carbohydrate. Then meal number three, which is typically going to be our pre-workout meal. Now, if you only eat, 4 meals in a day, then meal number two would be spaced out a little bit longer. We would remove the fats, but it's going to look very similar to that second meal. It's going to be high protein, and then we're going to do high carbohydrates. And typically in this meal, we want a more complex, or excuse me, we want a more simple carbohydrate. So white rice, you could still do a sweet potato. Cream of rice is a good one, cream of wheat. But something that's going to digest fairly quickly, because we don't want to hit the gym with that food still in our stomach digesting, because that's where the majority of the blood is going to go rather than out to the muscles where we need it. So pre-workout meal, whether that's meal two or meal three, we're going to go lower fats. So typically I'll do a protein source that is a little bit leaner. So like a 93 or a 97% ground turkey, chicken breast versus chicken thighs. And then we're going to do that simple carbohydrate that can come from fruit. A lot of times I like doing rice with pineapple, or having like an applesauce cup is a great one. yogurt, raisins, but generally it's a protein and then some form of simple carbohydrate. From there, I would recommend eating that anywhere from 60 to 120 minutes, so about an hour to 2 hours prior to training. I personally go about 2 hours just so the food is fully digested. But if you find that you're getting into your workout and you're just absolutely starving, then move that meal up a little bit closer to an hour before training. Um, Post-workout nutrition. Now, it's always been told that we have to have a post-workout shake within 30 minutes. 30 minutes, you got to have, that's your window. That's not true. The post-workout shake thing is simply just a marketing ploy from the protein companies to get you to drink more protein. Any opportunity you can, I always recommend eat whole foods. I personally do a shake after. I'm not worried if it's directly 30 minutes, usually just so long as it's within about an hour or so of your workout, just because we have to look at the time that you last ate, right? So for me, I eat 2 hours prior to training, and then I train for a little bit over an hour, which means by the time I get home, I'm now 3.5, 4 hours since I've had my last meal. So I'm pretty hungry. In this particular manner, we want something that is very similar to our pre-workout. And the reason being is we want to get the blood glucose spiked again so we can uptake the nutrients so the body can start repairing and recovering as quickly as possible. So you don't want high fiber, you don't want high fat. And that's where I will typically do something like kids rice-based cereal and protein shake. And it's a great way to curb your sweet tooth, satisfy kind of that craving. But rice cakes with jam is another good one. Bagel or English muffin with jam is another good one. So there's a lot of really good options out there that you can use. But again, it doesn't have to be a shake. You can do whole food. So you could do, again, a lean protein source with white rice. You can do, I've even had some people that have made like wraps are a great one. Get a tortilla or two smaller tortillas, chicken, rice, throw a little bit of sauce on there, lettuce, wrap it up. You can eat that. So post-workout will look very similar to pre-workout. And then the last meal of the night, I usually will try to do a protein, carb, and a fat. And the reason being is I want my client, or I want myself, to be satiated and going to bed not hungry, because it allows for better sleep, it allows for better recovery, and having a mixture of the carbohydrates in this manner, whether it's a simple or complex, really doesn't matter, because we're adding some fats in along with our protein. And I'll usually go a little bit fattier choice of protein, so things like ground beef, salmon, chicken thighs, and then we may even add in something like avocado or a nut butter or an oil of sorts, so olive oil, avocado oil, macadamia nut oil, so that sort of thing. That way we're not only getting a blend of healthy fats, both from the protein source itself, things like salmon are high in omega-3 and omega-6. Beef has a ton of good attributes to it, good beef as far as iron and some other micronutrients. But I like to incorporate all three of those in the final meal of the day for the person that's training mid-afternoon. So let's talk next about the person that is training first thing in the morning. Now you have a couple of different options here. If you're somebody who can get up, eat, and go train, then we want to go with something that is very easy to digest. So this is usually going to be like a cream of rice. I may even do something like a shake, do cream of rice with a scoop of protein and maybe even just a tablespoon of honey, add some water, add some ice, blend it up, drink it, off to the gym you go. Now, if you're somebody who does not like to train almost immediately or want to wake up an hour early to get food in, the next best thing would be to backload carbohydrates. And so generally what that looks like is the last two meals of the night before, we're going to incorporate carbohydrates at a little bit higher rate. That way your body's able to wake up and utilize those. Now, the most important thing with the person training first thing in the morning is getting adequate water. So I always recommend, and I recommend this to all my clients, but within the first 20 minutes of waking up, drink 16 to 24 ounces of water. Now, for the person that's training first thing in the morning, I recommend getting 32 ounces if possible in prior to your training session. Make sure you add a little bit of pink Himalayan sea salt or something like LMNT, some sort of electrolyte powder, something that is giving you some electrolytes along with the water, because your body needs the sodium to hold that water and pull in a lot of the nutrients. So meal number one is going to either be nothing at all, but make sure you get a substantial amount of carbohydrates the night before, or we're going to go with a simple carbohydrate that is easily digestible. If you're one of those people that's an if it fits your macros thing, I don't recommend doing Pop-Tarts. Just because something fits your macros doesn't mean your body is processing it the same way that it would a better alternative. And I don't like using the terms good and bad food, but your body will process certain foods better than it will others. So I can assure you, doing something like oats or cream of rice with some fruit and a protein powder, or even just, egg whites, it's going to utilize that much better than something that's highly processed. So meal two for that person is going to look very similar, either protein shake and cereal, a whole food meal that consists of high protein, high carbohydrates, very little fat, very little fiber. Then again, throughout the day, we'll start slowly stacking our carbohydrates. Meal three, I'll probably go with something that is high in protein, high in fiber, and either fairly low in carbohydrates or no carbohydrates at all, and then some added fats. This is going to help slow down the blood glucose spike that we just created from the workout and then the first two meals. That way you don't get that midday crash. It's going to kind of stabilize and level you off. Then as we get into our last meal or two of the night, we can start incorporating more carbohydrates, keeping some fats in. Usually I'll just opt for a fattier cut of meat, again, chicken thighs, salmon, beef, and we'll get our fats in that way, or through a little bit of avocado, nuts, nut butter, nut oils. And meal two and three on that will look relatively the same: moderate protein, moderate fat, moderate carb. So that covers the midday person working out, that covers our early person working out. And then for the person working out later in the evening, maybe it's after dinner, they come home, they handle, cooking dinner, or they relieve the spouse and then the spouse can go train, whatever that looks like. It's going to be a very similar setup as the person training early afternoon. The first two meals will most likely just be protein fat, unless they're highly active. We'll add some carbohydrates in. And then the last three meals, pre-workout, post-workout, and their first two meals will be protein fat primarily. And then the third meal will be a protein fat carb generally, or a protein carb. They'll have their pre-workout meal, which will look the same as everything we already discussed. And then that would be like their dinner. Then they go train. And then this person most likely will want to opt for a shake if they're training late. They probably don't want to eat a full whole food meal right before bed. But either way, it's an option. And again, we're going to go high protein, high carbohydrate, very low to no fat, very low to no fiber. So that's how I like to prioritize nutrition based around training. The biggest thing to remember is, regardless of when you train, you want to prioritize the bulk of your carbohydrate intake around pre and post workout. If you're somebody who's active throughout the day, then you can kind of spread carbohydrates out a little bit more throughout all of those meals, or a few of those meals. But you want the bulk, I would say probably 70, leaning upwards of 80% is what I typically do, being pre and post workout, for your body to be able to utilize that the best. If you're sedentary style job, so sitting, not moving a whole lot, then again, you'll want to lean more towards that 80. If you're somebody who's constantly moving, walking, that sort of thing, then you can spread those carbohydrates out a little bit more, just to make sure that you have sustained energy throughout the day. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out. For any training inquiries, you can reach me at dgrogans39@gmail.com. You can visit my website, which is nxtlevel-training.com, or hit me up on Instagram at dgrow39. So that does it for today's Coach's Corner. And if you guys have any questions or want to see anything on upcoming Coach's Corner, let me know. I'm happy to go over them. So that does it. I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.